Hi, I'm Lim Graham. My topic today is using perceptions to eradicate cultural schemas that view persons with disabilities as asexual. So why this topic? Well, I have a disability, autism, and I want others to view me as a potential romantic partner like any typical person without a disability. But for disabled persons, DPs, that's easier said than done. For the rest of this presentation, I will refer to disabled persons or disabled people as DPs, and non-disabled persons as either typical or non-DPs. It's easier and avoids the negative connotations that frequently accompany disability. And by the way, the persons on this slide are Hannah Aylward and Shane Burkaw. He has a spinal muscular atrophy and she is a typical non-DP. They are an actual romantic couple who post videos about their lives to raise awareness of DP sexuality so that society can move toward not stigmatizing persons in relationships involving DPs and not viewing DPs as asexual. They have a YouTube following of 841,000 subscribers. Love. It's what makes the world go around. It's part of being alive. It's part of being human. Our biological imperative. Perpetuation of the species is most easily accomplished the old-fashioned way, through sexual reproduction. Most people, including DPs, want to love, be loved, and make love, just like everyone else. However, a study in 2010 authored by Shanif Esmail and others titled Attitudes and Perceptions Towards Disability and Sexuality found that due to a predominantly heteronormative idea of sex and what is considered natural, typical people, non-DPs, commonly view DPs as asexual. Unfortunately, according to a 2018 study by Zonte Hunt et al., disabilities often trigger a negative impact on non-DPs' ability to view DPs as a potential romantic partner, resulting in barriers for DPs to overcome experience aspects of their sexuality, just like ramps must exist for DPs to overcome barriers to their access to buildings. The negative impacts arise from ignorance, speculation, and prejudice. So the Hunt study titled Dating Persons with Physical Disabilities, the Perceptions of South Africans Without Disabilities revealed largely negative attitudes towards people with physical disabilities. The non-disabled study respondents perceived numerous barriers towards relationships with a DP, including social stigma, anxiety, and concerns about the burden of care they believe such a relationship would place on them. Findings contributed to a nuancing and expanding of the myth of asexuality among physically disabled people by showing that people with physical disabilities are actively desexualized by persons without disability. Why do we stigmatize disabled persons' sexuality? Education and knowledge drive societal attitudes and perceptions. Per Esmail et al.'s 2010 study, non-DPs have little to no information, nor education, about DPs and DP sexuality, and that drives the stigmatization. Because societal attitudes and perceptions are driven by education and knowledge, if there's no exposure to sexuality and disability to provide information, education and knowledge, it follows suit that society would have a narrow understanding of these issues. Again, zero exposure to sexuality and disability equals narrow understanding of sexuality and disability. The 2017 student edition of Adler and Proctor's text, Looking Out, Looking In, discusses influences on perception. It cites physiological, social roles, and cultural differences as strong influences on people's perceptions of others. Information becomes perceived through these domains or lenses. The text authors note that we can only make sense of what we know, and that none of us knows everything about even the people we hold closest in our lives, and that when new information becomes available, one's perceptions of others change. That's why information and education are so important for DPs to be seen as sexual beings. A 2017 study published by Ditchman et al. Indicated that, in applying H.G. Triandis' four-factor conceptualization of culture, 2 of 4 cultural categorizations were associated with more positive attitudes. One categorization was associated with more negative attitudes, with the last categorization having no association either way. Results highlight the impact of individual and societal characteristics on attitudes, suggesting that cultural orientation plays a role in mitigating and perpetuating stigma toward individuals with intellectual disabilities. Additional barriers to DP sexual equity access exist, including physical, societal, and personal barriers. Going back to the looking out, looking in text, Adler and Proctor describe 4 steps to the interpersonal perception process: selection, organization, interpretation, and negotiation. Interpretation appears to be the most fruitful area for providing non-DPs knowledge and information about DP sexuality in hopes of changing the false perceptions otherwise indicated by one's culture that DPs are asexual. So how does the world move towards eradicating the myth of DP asexuality through changing non-DPs' perception of them? Well, more studies, as noted earlier, into particular disability populations, many different nuances of disabilities exist: physical, developmental, intellectual, disabled from birth or later in life, etc. Increased education awareness of typical people as to DP's sexuality as human beings, creating more opportunities for societal contact among DPs with non-DPs on an equal basis in everyday life, for example, in academia, the workplace, and public spaces including advertising, entertainment, politics, celebrities, social media, etc. Because when DPs are seen as a regular and normal part of our societal and cultural fabric, they will then be seen as potential romantic partners, and dismantling bars to access their sexuality, which, without those bars, would be likely to foster and support relationships and intimacy with DPs. Finally, because a lack of education and information drives the stigma that desexualizes persons, I leave you all with the challenge that takes less than 3 minutes. Help eradicate the cultural myth of DP's asexuality by educating and informing yourself by watching a 2-minute 49-second trailer to a movie called Yes, We Fuck. Sorry for language, but that's the movie title. The short trailer for the full 1-hour documentary is in Spanish, but captions transcribed in English. Trigger warning: the trailer contains partial and brief nudity and discussion of sexuality of human beings. Other than the title, there's no explicit language. The choice to watch it or not, and if you watch it, to share your thoughts about it, are of course yours. Eradicating the myth awaits your participation. So the link to the trailer on YouTube and the full documentary on Vimeo are the last 2 references on this page. Both are free. Thanks for the opportunity to change the world's perception of DP's sexuality, one view at a time. Share a link to this video if you found it interesting. Thank you for your time, attention, and consideration of this important topic. Peace off.